Welcome to Zambition, the channel on which we engage in dialogue with leaders from across sectors and generations. Greetings and welcome to Zambition. My name is Martin Kalungbanda, your host on this channel. To begin part 2 of Zambition, we start with two very interesting guests. Our first guest is Ms. Linda Kasonde, a lawyer and a civil rights activist. She is the owner of LCK Chambers. Linda is the founder and executive director of the Chapter 1 Foundation, a leading human rights organization in Zambia. Linda happens to be the first woman to have been elected as president of the Law Association of Zambia. Among the many fellowships Linda has received include the Stanford University Draper Hills Fellowship and the University of Harvard Leadership in the 21st Century program. Linda has received both local and international recognition for her leadership. In December 2016, the prestigious The Africa Report named Linda as one of the people to watch out for in 2017. Linda is also the Vice President for Africa for the Commonwealth Lawyers Association. Linda, welcome to Zambition.
Thank you, Martin. It's a pleasure to be here.
Our second guest is Mr. Rueben Lifuka. Rueben is a veteran of civil society work in Zambia and on the continent of Africa. He has been involved in the promotion of human rights, good governance, integrity in public life, and environmental rights for over 22 years. By training, he is an architect and a development policy practitioner. Rueben has served on a number of local and international boards of directors. He is the current vice chair for the global board of Transparency International. Rueben, welcome to Zambition.
Thank you, Martin. It's a pleasure being here.
May I begin asking you, Linda, what is the one experience in your life's journey that you think may have shaped you the most into the person you are today?
Martin, I think there's been a number of experiences, but I'll say firstly, it started at home. My mother told my sister and I that as women, it was important to have a profession because whatever happens to you, you'll always have that thing to fall back on. And I think what she was trying to instill in us, my sister and I, was a level of independence, not just as independent thinkers, but also materially. My father, on the other hand, said to all my siblings that we could be whatever we wanted to be. And I think that was very liberating, especially from a father figure, a male figure, because it allowed us to believe that there were no constraints on what we could do, regardless of our gender or any other constraints. And moving on to my education, I spent my secondary school at a school in Swaziland called Waterford Kamhlaba, which is a school that was created out of the anti-apartheid movement to support the movement for equality amongst all peoples. And Kamhlaba means one world. And there were people from all different backgrounds, whether social, economic, religious, cultural, ethnic, you name it, we were all there. That instilled in me, working and living with people different from myself, that we really are all equal. And one of the things that was encouraged at the school, in fact, it was mandatory, was community service. So I began quite young because I reached there when I was 11 years old. And so I spent the next 7 years doing various community projects at that school. And also, I have a friend, Natasha Chiumia, who's been very instrumental in building my courage muscle. She encouraged me to go after opportunities that I aspired for, just simply by asking and putting myself out there. And that set me up to become partner and named partner at the previous law firm that I was at. And it also set me up to become LAS president over a period of years that I spent at the Law Association of Zambia, working in various capacities, not only at the association, but also in civil society. And my experience there has led to what I'm doing now as the founder and executive director of Chapter One Foundation, which is an organization that promotes human rights, the rule of law, constitutionalism, and social justice.
Thank you very much, Linda. Fascinating to learn from you that the role of parents, what they invite us to, what they sort of attract out of our young lives, matters a lot. You combine that with quality education and a circle of friendships that keep cheering us up, encouraging us to be as fully who we are as possible. Ruben, what about you? Of the one or two moments in your life's journey that may have shaped you the most into the person you are today?
Well, I think again, I would go back to the issue of parenting. Of course, my parents helped me to be who I am, but also the instances that happened in our family, the death of our parents, particularly my father, almost 33 years now. It did change a lot in my own life. My mother had retired several years ago to take care of my father, who was diabetic. And at the time, diabetic care was not very easy. So she had to be home. She was looking after all of us. So she had to step in and do a couple of businesses. We suffered property grabbing at the time. So all that made me realize that I needed to stand up for my family, but also for people who were in a similar situation. So I went back to university. I was in my second year, going into my third year, and I launched myself into student politics. And the reason why I did that was not about creating fame for myself, but defending those among us, among the student body who were in a similar predicament, if not worse. Those were coming from vulnerable groups, because it made me start asking questions. So I did not come from a poor family necessarily. My father was a district administrative secretary for Mansa, and before that he was a magistrate. So it was not like I was coming from a poor and vulnerable family. But I was trying to imagine those that were not as privileged as I was up until that time. How did they manage to go through life, and who was really speaking for them? So my joining in student politics was from that perspective. I was engaged in starting up the Corporate Law Students Union through the writing of the Constitution and participating in the elections, but remaining a vocal voice even during the campaigns for the return to multipartyism in 1991. I think the self-schema that I now developed, this awareness of what I stand for, the values I stand for, became sharper after the death of my father. So after graduation, I came into Lusaka, worked in private sector, a private architecture firm, worked for quasi-government, the National Heritage Conservation Commission as a conservation architect. But my passion was outside architecture. It was about social justice issues. And I found myself in civil society. By 30, I was already heading a civil society entity.
Thank you, Ruben. Linda, Zambia at 57 years of independence, with a population close to 20 million people, in human years, we must be a mature being. What is your ambition? What is your highest aspiration for our country?
Martin, my highest aspiration for Zambia is that we, the people of Zambia, never forget that we as a collective are more powerful than any government that we elect into office. And this is a lesson that Zambia has continued to learn throughout the decades. I would say probably beginning with the movement for multi-party democracy, onto the anti-third term debate, and then the defeat of the Constitution Amendment Bill number 10 of 2019. And of course, Zambia has also managed to remove incumbent governments through the ballot box several times. And we really are unique in that respect on the continent. We are really a beacon of democracy for others to follow. And I say we're unique because other countries around us, not just around us in terms of our near neighbors, but even further afield, have actually failed to remove the liberation struggle governments, even though it has become quite clear that the people don't want them anymore. And linked to that, Martin, is my aspiration that we never again allow any government to frighten us into silence. Democracy thrives on the marketplace of ideas.
Ruben, your Zambition. Thank you, Linda. You highlight two core elements here that we never forget as a people, that we are more powerful than any other government, any government at all. And the fact that you put a line to this, which I liked a lot, that we don't allow any government to silence our voice on matters that are important to us as a country. Ruben, your ambition.
My ambition is that we're going to have a leadership at all levels, be it community, district, or national level, a leadership that creates the environment, the right environment for people to find the best of themselves, for people to find their worth, and for people to find value. Leadership should be about this expression of value. As Kelvin Cashman says, find value in the people that you lead. And you can only do that if you have resonant leadership, a leadership that is visionary, a leadership that is facilitative, a leadership that is democratic. My ambition really is that we need to have leaders who know that theirs is about service to the community or to the people and not service to themselves. I want to see resonant leadership at all levels. Resonant leadership as opposed to the pace-setting and command and control leadership. Pace-setting leadership is what we call dissonant leadership. It's about my vision, my mission being the main thing that we should all be talking about. I'd like to see a leadership that has this shared mission. And to get shared mission requires you to interact with the people and to touch the people that you lead at a much higher level than just at the intellectual level. Leadership should not only aspire to appeal to our intellect, it's about our emotions. A leadership that is empathetic, really being empathetic as a leader means that understanding people from their perspective, what they're going through from their perspective. That's a leadership I would like to see, and that's my ambition.
Maybe just to add to that, Martin, I think what Ruben is talking about is servant leadership. And I've recently posted on my Facebook wall that posing the question to the public as to whether or not we still have leaders who are in it purely for service. Serving one's country should be the highest honor and privilege. To lead those who have put you into office. The root of the word leader means to die a little. for others, putting others before yourself. And another of my aspirations is that we have more leaders who want to die a little for the country.
Thank you very much. You both allude to leadership as service. One of my teachers said to our group at one time, there are 3 types of leaders. And the first one is what he termed as the warrior leader. I am your leader, follow me, is their mantra. The second one, he said, it is the mentor leader. I am your leader, how may I teach you, is their mantra. And he said the third one is the servant leader, the one you have both alluded to. And the mantra they work with is, I am your leader, how may I serve you? In your own experience as leaders, what is the balance between standing in front and asking everyone to follow you, and in this particular case, inviting people, how may I serve you? You listen and then you move next. What balance have you drawn in your work? Let's begin with you, Ruben.
Well, it's not always easy to draw that balance, particularly if you have specific goals you want to achieve. And this is where a number of people miss it. If you have targets that you'd like to achieve, there's always a tendency to be pace setting and having this command and control. But over time, and as you grow into your leadership, you discover that you need to work with people and you need to really coach them. So that leader who's a coach comes out from you by way of your leadership style. But I've also discovered over the years that building relations among the people that I lead is more sustainable in how they then excel in their own work. Let me say this, in leadership, there's what we call emotional contagion. The emotions carried by the leader are mirrored by the people that they lead. So if a leader is really always shouting, commanding, that's what's going to be reflected at different levels of the organization. So your middle management will mirror your emotions, just like the junior management. But if a leader has this positive attitude, they have this relationship with one another. They are aware of what's happening in their team. That's the same contagion that you see going right through the organization. But also, as a leader, I've discovered that there comes a time when you need to demonstrate to the people that you're working with that you can achieve mileage from failure. At times we think that failure does not provide us any mileage, but the very opposite is true. You can achieve mileage from failure. But you should also teach your team.
Before you go to the next point, how could you give an example of gaining mileage from failure?
I think that every occurrence in an organization, every development in an organization presents you learning moments. Whether you've succeeded in delivering on your consultancy project, for us who are running consultancy firms, you should not just bask in the glory of having delivered that consultancy. What can we learn? What made us achieve this? How did we relate? Is there a staff member whom we should really be putting out on the pedestal for the work that they did? Making every staff member believe and own the success. Similarly, when there is failure, it's a moment again to not to say that we have failed and really castigate everyone and find blame in the team, but use that as a moment to say, how can we do things better? A lot of us get stuck in asking the question, why? As opposed to saying, what can we learn? But is why did this fail? Who did what? But I've discovered over the years that the important question is not why. The important question is, what can we learn from what has happened?
Your experience, Linda, the balance between heading on, asking everyone to follow us, and being a servant leader?
Those three types of leadership are employed at different times in different circumstances. In moments of crisis, everyone is looking to the leader to see how this issue will be resolved. And those are very lonely times. It's happened to me a couple of times in my journey. And you have to appear to be in control of the situation and to be guiding people as to the best course of action, of course, in consultation with other people. I also think that leadership is in phases. I recently heard a podcast of Oprah Winfrey interviewing a gentleman called Arthur Brooks, who is a social scientist, a lecturer at Harvard, and a columnist for The Atlantic. And he's written a book about how to retire happily. And he starts off by telling us that he wrote the book because at the time he thought about it, he was very unhappy. He was a high-performing leader, earning a lot of money, but his relationships in his family and amongst his friends were suffering as a result of it, and he was very unhappy. And so he started studying how to achieve a better balance as a leader. And one of the things he says is that there's a kind of graph of if you like, success in your leadership journey. At the beginning, in your 20s and 30s, you're on the ascendancy. Especially if you're high performing. This is where he says things are all about go, achieve. And then at some point towards your late 30s into your 40s, you now start to plateau and then start to decline. And he said that people who retire happy are leaders who graduate to what he calls the grandparent phase, where it's no longer about achieving so much, but also now imparting wisdom on others. And I think the person who probably embodies that the most was someone like Nelson Mandela, or even Mahatma Gandhi. Very philosophical, imparting wisdom. So I think also you evolve as a leader with time. There's a time, experience will change you, circumstance will change you. And so there'll be different phases in that respect. But ultimately, even if you are in the warrior phase where you're leading in crisis, at the back of your mind, it shouldn't be for self. But whatever your objective is, whatever you're trying to achieve in resolving that crisis should have the people at heart, whatever the circumstance, or the greater good at the very least.
That's wonderful.
But I just chime in a little bit on what Linda is saying, Martin, with your permission.
Please go ahead.
I think that what Linda is referring to is important. It reminds me of the writings of Nancy Cohen. Nancy Cohen is a historian and a professor in the Harvard Business School, and she's written a book called Forged in Crisis. And she talks about the powerful role of courageous leaders in turbulent times. She studies a number of leaders who were in turbulent times, including Abraham Lincoln. But I like the example she gives about Ernest Shackleton, the British explorer in 1915, who's exploring Antarctica, and their ship Endurance goes under when they hit an iceberg. But in all these examples, she says something about crisis. It says all the leaders she studied in this book, whenever they are faced with crisis, they are not consumed by the immediacy of their circumstances, but they step back and they observe the bigger landscape, including their role in that landscape. They have to have a relationship with themselves before they can even be part of the bigger landscape. And she also makes mention this is a point that I wanted to raise earlier on, that resilience, whenever you are faced with crisis, you should know that resilience is a muscle that can be developed. And that is something that I've always taken to heart whenever faced with a crisis as a leader. Thank you.
Fantastic. I was just going to build on what you are both saying here. For the need to play these three elements in leadership: a mentor, the person who stands up because there is a crisis to be resolved, you may call them a warrior, or the servant. But I also love the idea of the grandparent stage in our lives as human beings, but also in our role as leaders. One of the stories I tell in my book on Nelson Mandela is the story that is said to have been coming from when Mandela realized, I am such a figure in society that I can overshadow everything, not because I want to, but because of the journey we have walked for our struggle. And he would deliberately leave the country and leave other people in charge, the unexpected people to be in charge. That's how Mr. Mangosuthu Buthelezi would act as president, even if he was coming from the opposition. And that's where the story goes, that he stopped chairing cabinet meetings 2 years before he left office so that he could allow Mr. Mbeki to gain the experience should he vie for the top job. That capacity to see oneself as a grandparent who should be leaving space. Our grandparents don't fight for space with us. They usher us into their space. I love the idea.
One of my favorite stories as a lawyer, because as you know, Nelson Mandela was a lawyer firstly before he became a president, is of the constitution-making process in South Africa. I'm told that the body that was sitting down, the technical team that was sitting down to deliberate over the constitution, was convened, and he walked in, and everyone expected him to give direction as to how they should execute this task. And basically he just said to them, you do your own job, and walked out. It was just a wonderful example of leadership, and as you say, grandparent leadership.
Linda and Ruben, I could listen to you all day, but I'm afraid our first part of this conversation has to end here. Thank you for the insights you have shared on a number of issues. In part 2, I will explore with you that nexus between leadership and national development. I'm looking forward to the second part. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to you both.
Very much. Thank you for the opportunity.